After saving his daughter's life, a rich man asks a beggar woman to be his bride for an hour at his ex-wife's wedding. But when the beggar woman arrives at the party, everyone is stunned. The cell phone woke up at 6 in the morning, interrupting David's light and restless sleep. He sighed as he stood up, already focused on the challenges that awaited him that day. The routine always seemed hectic, and he had no time to waste. After a quick shower, he went to the next room, where Evelyn, his 7-year-old daughter, was still sleeping peacefully. David approached and gently stroked her hair. He whispered in a soft voice, trying not to scare her. "Evelyn, love, it's time to wake up. We have a whole day ahead of us. Come on, we can't be late for school." Evelyn rubbed her eyes lazily, still immersed in the comfort of the duvet. "Can I stay just 5 more minutes?" he asked, with a reluctant expression. "And I don't want cereal for breakfast, okay? Oh, and I don't want to go to your office after school either. It's so boring." David tried to maintain the balance between the firmness and tenderness she needed. "There's no cereal today. I made toast with your favorite jam," he replied with a smile. "And as for the office, Jennifer, my secretary, will take care of you after school. You know you're still too young to be alone at home. Plus your nanny is still sick and won't be able to come. Come on, my angel, get up. I'll wait for you at breakfast." David's life was marked by luxury and success. One of the city's most renowned architects, he had a meticulously planned routine from dawn until night. After dropping Evelyn off at school, I headed to the office, where complex projects and negotiations gave no respite. Endless meetings filled his day, which often stretched late into the night. Since his divorce with Layla and his ex-partner Gail's betrayal, David has focused even more on work, opening his own architecture office after the painful dissolution of his previous partnership. The decision to start over was brave but exhausting. In a short time, he rebuilt his reputation, regaining important clients and establishing new connections in neighboring cities. However, success had its price. Time with Evelyn was scarce. Sometimes he had to take his daughter to the office after school, as the long work hours made him worry about leaving her alone. Even so, the corporate environment never pleased her. One day, Jennifer brought the girl after ballet class, and Evelyn sat in her father's room with her arms crossed and a bored expression. "I don't like being here, Daddy. It's all so boring," he complained. "Can I call Mom and ask to come to her house? Will you pick me up later?" Evelyn's question brought a heavy silence to the room, and David sighed deeply. "Of course you can call, my love," he replied with a tone that mixed frustration and understanding. "She is your mother, after all. But I think maybe I don't have time for you right now. She's always busy with other important things." Evelyn shook her head, her eyes filled with sadness. He took out his cell phone and dialed his mother's number. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to sound excited. "I called you because I haven't heard your voice in a while. Can we go for ice cream, or can I come to your house? I am feeling homesick." There was a pause before Layla responded, her voice tense and somewhat nervous. "Honey, I can't today," he said. "I'm full of things to do. You know Mom is always busy. If I get some free time on the weekend, I'll call you, okay?" Evelyn was sad. The childish face made a pout that squeezed David's heart. He knew well how much his daughter missed her mother, but the woman simply didn't want to keep in touch with the girl. To distract Evelyn, David thought quickly and did what always worked. He winked and proposed something. "How about a break from work?" he suggested with an excited smile. "Let's eat a giant ice cream with 3 scoops covered in chocolate, strawberries, and sprinkles. What do you think?" Evelyn's eyes sparkled with joy, and a big smile lit up her face. The sadness from before evaporated like magic, and soon she was chatting happily about school. After devouring the family-sized ice cream, Evelyn felt renewed. He took out his notebook and started doing his homework, while David tried to enjoy the moment of peace. However, he soon had to leave for an important meeting. Before leaving, he stopped for a moment at the door of the room. The smile returned when he saw Evelyn asleep on the couch, wrapped in a pile of blankets. David went into the kitchen, made himself a strong coffee, and settled into his favorite leather chair. For a moment, he closed his eyes and let his thoughts flow. His biggest dream was to guarantee Evelyn a life full of opportunities, something he never had. David's childhood was difficult. He grew up in a home where love was scarce, shrouded in poverty and sadness. The father, absent, was sinking into alcohol, while the mother, overwhelmed with work and frustrations, was unable to offer affection or encouragement. Even in the midst of this reality, David had a brilliant mind and a natural talent for design and architecture. At school, he particularly excelled in subjects that required creativity and advanced thinking. His teachers saw enormous potential in him and often praised him for his dedication. Since I was little, I loved drawing. His imagination flowed onto paper, creating innovative architectural designs with a passion that seemed innate. But when he revealed to his mother his desire to be an architect, the reaction was discouraging. "Architecture? Who do you think you are? This is pure fantasy," she said with a skeptical look. "You'll never make a living from these drawings. Better to think about something practical, like being a doctor or a lawyer." Despite the lack of support, David stood firm. Determined to change his destiny, he left his hometown in search of an education that could turn his dreams into reality. The beginning was difficult. Without money, he had to work as a waiter, salesman, and even a doorman to pay the bills. But not even the difficulties made him give up. He studied architecture with all his dedication, surviving on scholarships and odd jobs. It was during his university years that David met Layla. She was an interior design student, full of dreams and talent, who seemed to have a future as promising as his. David, ambitious and captivating, fell in love with her at first sight. The two quickly connected, sharing visions of a future of success and growth together. After graduation, the couple married and opened an architecture firm. The business prospered, driven by David's innovative ideas and Layla's impeccable aesthetic touch. But since life is never perfect, the fast pace of work and the demands of family life began to take a toll on them. Layla felt that David's attention was decreasing, especially after Evelyn's birth. The responsibilities multiplied, and she began to feel neglected and lacking in affection. Feeling increasingly disconnected, Layla made a decision that would change everything. She left the office she had built alongside David. Seeking emotional relief, he ended up getting involved with someone else. It was a troubled time in which she tried to deal with the confusion of feelings while still remaining by David's side for Evelyn's sake. But the emptiness in her heart yearned for something more, a spark that would reignite the passion she missed. It was then that Gail came into his life. He was a new partner at the firm, introduced by David. With his easy smile and charismatic look, Gail quickly won Layla's attention. One night, the two were alone in the office. Gail invited her to dinner, and the friendly conversation soon took a different turn. Layla initially reacted with resistance, but as the night progressed, tensions rose. When she realized it, she was already in Gail's arms, in what would be her first betrayal of her husband. After that night, Layla started to meet Gail more frequently. She made excuses for David, saying that she needed time for herself, that she was exhausted with caring for Evelyn and the pressures of everyday life. The outings became constant, and the relationship with Gail consumed Layla so much that she began to move even further away from her family. Evelyn also felt the impact, being left aside by her mother. Meanwhile, David realized something was wrong. The nights became long and lonely, filled with thoughts of jealousy and frustration. He tried several times to talk to Layla, trying to understand the changes in her behavior, but she always denied any problem, creating excuses that sounded increasingly empty. The affection and tenderness that once existed between them were disappearing, leaving only a shadow of what they once were. Even in the face of so much pain, David refused to give up. "I believed it was just a bad phase, that Layla would go back to being the loving partner she was before. She didn't want a divorce, thinking about Evelyn's well-being, who still needed her mother so much." However, when Evelyn turned 5, the situation became untenable. The conflicts reached a critical point, and David had to face the harsh reality that he had been trying to avoid for so long. Layla, unable to deal with the double life she was leading, made a drastic decision. She left David and Evelyn. He left without looking back, leaving only a farewell note. "I'm sorry, but I can't live like this anymore. I fell in love with Gail a long time ago, and I no longer feel anything for you, David. I'm going to file for divorce." The words ripped through like a blade. David, devastated by the betrayal and Layla's sudden departure, felt the world crumble around him. How would she explain to Evelyn that her mother was gone? especially to be with someone who worked alongside them every day. The nights were the worst. David lay awake, trying to find the strength to comfort his daughter, even though his own heart was in pieces. The court case made things even more painful. That was when David discovered that Gail, taking advantage of his trust, had transferred most of the company's assets into his own name. The betrayal was not just limited to his wife, but now it also involved the business he and Layla had built with so much effort. Fortunately, the house where they lived remained with David and Evelyn. It was a small consolation in the midst of so many losses. Despite the humiliation and pain, David refused to let it get him down. Although he was the target of gossip in the city and faced looks of pity or contempt in places he frequented, he decided to move on. His focus turned to rebuilding his life, offering Evelyn all the love and care she deserved. Determined, David would not let the situation define who he was. David found the strength to move forward by focusing on his passion for sustainable architecture. It was a project that I had put aside, but now seemed like a chance for a new beginning. With the help of old friends and support from the community, he began to turn his idea into a reality. The new Sustainable Architecture office has become a beacon of hope, not only for him, but for the city. David's projects focused on reusing materials that would previously have been discarded as waste. He led initiatives that changed the way the city dealt with waste, using creativity and innovation to transform the urban landscape. The impact was so great that sometime later David was awarded by the mayor, recognized for his contribution to society. David rebuilt everything he had lost to his former partner and more. His assets grew considerably, but as if a scale lost its balance, the attention to Yuli became less and less. Work took up almost all of her time in an attempt to overcome the pain and damage from a previous relationship that had left deep scars. While David struggled to show love and affection, the fear of repeating the mistakes of his childhood, marked by the absence of parents who worked too much, always haunted him. He reflected on how he could change this situation. Deep in these thoughts, a knock on the door brought him out of his reverie. He got up to answer, but took one last look at Yuli, who was sleeping peacefully on the sofa. Shortly after, Yuli woke up, rubbing her eyes. Still drowsy, she started to do her homework, but the task soon became tedious. Her attention was drawn to the window. On the other side, the street pulsed with life, and a park full of swings, slides, and monkey bars seemed like an irresistible invitation to have fun. Driven by an impulse of adventure, she decided to get out of there while David remained busy. Yuli crossed the street without thinking twice, but the adventure was abruptly cut short by the screeching sound of a car's brakes. A strong hand pulled her back, saving her from danger. Frightened, with tears streaming down her face, the girl looked up and saw an unkempt-looking woman with tangled hair and worn-out clothes. "You need to be more careful when crossing the street, little one," the woman said in a serious but gentle voice. "Now stop crying. Everything is fine. What is your name?" With a trembling voice, Yuli replied, "My name is Yuli." Still crying, she explained, "My dad is working in that building. I just wanted to play a little, but he's going to be mad at me." The woman noticed the fear and innocence in the girl's eyes. With a gentle smile, he offered his hand. "Don't worry, Yuli. I'll take you back before he notices you left. Let's go." Meanwhile, David noticed that Yuli was no longer in the office. His heart raced and he began to blame himself for his daughter's disappearance. He searched the building, checking every room and bathroom, but Yuli was nowhere to be found. Desperate, he called Jennifer, his secretary, to help with the search together. They went out into the street, and it was there that David saw his daughter. Yuli was accompanied by a humble-looking woman, perhaps a homeless woman. Without thinking twice, David ran towards them. "Who are you? What are you doing with my daughter?" David shouted, his voice filled with panic. "Get away from her or I'll call the police." Father, don't yell at her," Yuli begged. "This lady saved me. I almost got hit by a car, and she pulled me back onto the sidewalk. Don't be mad at her, please. I'm sorry, I promise I'll never go out alone again." David hugged Yuli tightly, feeling relief fill his heart. "My love, I was so scared. Please don't do this again. You will never understand how dangerous it is out there. You are the most precious thing I have, my angel. I can't allow anything bad to happen to you." Yuli, still with tears in her eyes, nodded silently. David then turned to the stranger who had saved his daughter. Shame hit him for being so rude moments before. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for yelling at you without understanding what was happening. Thank you very much for saving my daughter." I walked away from the office for a moment, and when I came back, she was no longer there. "I am eternally grateful for your help." David pulled out his wallet, trying to offer some bills as a thank you. "Accept this, please. I want to give back in some way." The woman, however, shook her head and refused. "No, young man. I don't need your money, but I appreciate it. I did this with all my heart, and I don't expect anything in return." She paused, her eyes full of sadness. "If you really want to help me, I would like a chance at work. Yes, that would be a real reward. I'm willing to do anything. I just want to start a new life, you know? I can't live like this anymore." David looked at the woman for a moment, absorbing her words. He then called Jennifer, his secretary, and whispered, "What if we hired you? With the workload increasing, it would be good to have someone else available. What do you think?" Jennifer frowned and muttered, "You're the boss, so we'll do whatever you want. But I don't really like that idea. What if she steals or gets involved with drugs? I don't trust her." David sighed but remained determined. "We're going to give it a chance, at least for a month or two on an experimental basis. If it doesn't work out, we make another decision. My daughter deserves this chance, Jennifer." With the decision made, he turned to the woman. "What is your name? Do you have any documents?" "My name is Stella," she replied, hope in her voice. "Yes, I have my identification here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. That's all I need to start over. I'm ready to work and dedicate myself to the fullest." David smiled, finally feeling lighter. "Nice to meet you, Stella. I'm David, the chief architect of this architecture and sustainability firm. You will start tomorrow at 8 a.m. Jennifer will explain everything to you and supervise your work." Stella started her new job at David's architectural office. She arrived excited, willing to do her best as an assistant, always polite and dressed impeccably. At the end of the first month, with his salary in his account, he made some changes. He bought new clothes, cut his hair, and even managed to rent a small room. All of this was his way of showing gratitude for that opportunity to start over. Over time, Stella began to get closer to David's daughter, little Evelyn. The two developed a special bond. Evelyn shared her joys and also some difficulties, and Stella listened with affection, feeling increasingly part of that new routine. 3 months passed, and David was happy with the decision to have her on the team. He praised his commitment and willingness to help with any task. But not everyone in the office was happy with Stella's presence. Jennifer, David's secretary, started to get upset. Jennifer had a secret love for her boss for years, and with her recent separation, she dreamed of becoming more than just an employee. When Stella began to stand out, Jennifer began to see her as a threat. Determined to remove her new assistant, Jennifer devised a plan. One day, he asked Stella to look for some documents, but he left false clues to incriminate her. Minutes later, the scandal began. "David, we have a problem," Jennifer shouted. "I left Stella alone, and when I came back she was going through confidential documents. I'm sure you plan to sell them. I think it's time to fire her. I warned you that hiring someone new could bring risks, and here's the proof." David was surprised. He called Stella to talk, and she defended herself firmly. "I didn't do anything wrong. I would never touch something I shouldn't. If you don't trust me, I'd rather leave than be unfairly accused." She looked David in the eyes, and with conviction added, "But I don't want to be arrested for something I didn't do." David hesitated, but something about Stella's sincerity touched him. "I'll look into it," he assured. While Jennifer, frustrated that her plan hadn't worked, walked away angrily, Evelyn, who had seen everything, approached her father. "Daddy, Stella didn't do anything. I saw Jennifer going through the documents. She set everything up to blame Stella because she doesn't like her. I was hiding under the table and I saw everything." David thanked his daughter. "You're quite a detective, Evelyn," he said with a smile. He reviewed the security cameras and confirmed the girl's version. He confronted Jennifer with the evidence. "Why did you do that, after so many years working with me?" Jennifer, embarrassed, hesitated but said with resentment, "That girl came to steal my place. She needed to teach me a lesson." David's anger was visible. He fired Jennifer on the spot. Relieved, Stella thanked him. "Thank you for believing in me. I just want a chance to live like any normal person." David smiled. "You deserve it, and I know I can count on you." It was the beginning of a new phase, with even stronger bonds. David looked at Stella, hesitated for a while, and finally asked, "Forgive my curiosity, but there is something I can't get out of my mind. How did you end up living on the streets? It's hard to understand. You seem like a person like anyone else, away from drugs or alcohol." Stella took a deep breath. Her eyes moistened, but she stared at David firmly. "It's difficult to explain," he began. "My life has always been full of ups and downs. I grew up without having any idea what a stable family was. My father and mother were addicted to alcohol, but to me it seemed normal. The smell of alcohol and cigarettes was constant in our house, and my father always brought different women to sleep there. Maybe that's why I've never been interested in drinking." She paused, gathering the strength to continue. "I managed to finish high school and got into community college. I took some jobs, saved money, and for a while I felt on the rise. I even opened my own business and everything seemed to be going well. It was then that I met a man who I thought was the ideal partner. We got married, but he cheated on me in a devastating way. Not only did he betray me emotionally, he also took all our money. In the blink of an eye, I lost everything. The business, the house. There was nothing left." David listened attentively, without interrupting. "The money ran out, the debts piled up, and I was forced to live on the street. It's an indescribable feeling, an endless void. But you know, when I saved Evelyn, something changed in me. It was as if a flame of hope had been lit again. She gave me the strength to want to rebuild my life. Now I'm trying to get back to normal. My biggest desire is to have a simple life, to form a family, have children, and contribute to society in some way." David listened with attentive eyes, and when Stella finished, he reflected for a moment. "Funnily enough, our stories are more similar than I imagined," he said. "I also grew up in a pretty dysfunctional family. Childhood was not easy, and I prefer not to remember the details. I was married to a woman who left me for my ex-partner. He not only took her, but also a good part of my fortune that I worked so hard to earn." David looked at Stella, with a mix of empathy and sadness. Evelyn still misses her mother, but Layla seems to have forgotten that she has a daughter. It has been more than 3 months since she last came to see her, but like you, I overcame many difficulties, and I'm sure you can too. The most important thing is that you already have the desire to change, and that is essential. Over time, David and Stella became a strong team at the architecture firm. Their hard work and dedication made the business grow and prosper. The atmosphere was one of success and satisfaction, but one morning a new challenge emerged unexpectedly. David opened the email and saw a wedding invitation. At first, he thought it was some kind of mistake, but he soon realized it was real. The invitation came from Layla, his ex-wife, who was about to marry Gail, David's ex-partner. Just thinking about the situation made a knot form in his stomach. Facing his ex's marriage to someone who had betrayed him would not be easy. While I was still processing the news, the phone rang. On the other side of the line, there was a large Chinese investor, owner of a series of construction companies, who had been promising $1 million contract for some time. "Hi, David, I hope you're doing well. I'll be in your city for the wedding, and I thought we could take the opportunity to talk about the business in person. I was glad to know that despite the divorce, you and your ex-wife maintain a good relationship. My trip is short, so I need you to be there to discuss this. Can you guarantee me you will?" David was speechless for a few seconds. He knew this was a great opportunity for growth for the firm, a golden chance. But the idea of going to the wedding and seeing Gail's face, happy and shameless next to Layla's, was humiliating. Even so, he replied without thinking too much, "Of course I'll be there. It will be a pleasure to talk to you at the event." After hanging up, David still felt dazed. He went back to his email and reread the invitation several times. Why would Layla invite me to her wedding? He asked himself, intrigued. She doesn't even bother to keep in touch with Evelyn, our daughter. Is this some kind of ploy to humiliate me in front of everyone? Or who knows, she really wants to improve our communication and make peace? David began to suspect that Layla might be behind the meeting with the investor. She knows me well, he thought. You know I would never turn down an important meeting, especially with such a promising investor. The frustration and discomfort were still great, but David realized he couldn't let this opportunity pass by. Even though it would be difficult to face Gail and Layla together, the prospect of such a significant contract could benefit the office and the community. At least it would be easier to show up with a girlfriend, he thought, shaking his head. But where will I find someone to accompany me until next week? The next day, David woke up with the feeling that the only way out of his complicated situation was to ask Stella for help. She, of all people, would probably be the only one willing to help him. When Stella entered the office, the tension was palpable. David, trying to hide his nervousness, greeted her with a shy smile. Stella noticed his discomfort and, with a bit of hesitation, commented, "You once told me that if I needed anything, you would be there. Well, now it's you who needs it, and I'm here." David took a deep breath before starting to explain. "I'm in a complicated situation with a potential client. I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend, just for today. I know it's a big ask, but it will have a positive impact on our company and, who knows, on many people's lives." He looked at her, hope evident in his eyes. Stella frowned, visibly surprised. "Look, David, you know I would help in any way, but people will realize that I don't fit into this world. This could make things worse." David, more confident, quickly replied, "Don't worry about it. The idea is that my ex-wife sees me with you and realizes what she lost by leaving me for that guy, Gail. Furthermore, Yuli's presence at this event is important to close a big deal. We don't even need to stay long, just long enough to make the right impression." Stella sighed, considering the proposal. "You promise it won't be awkward, and that I don't need to do anything but smile and stay by your side?" "I promise," David assured. "I'm going to buy you an amazing dress and prepare a story that makes sense. Just having you there will help a lot." The big day arrived, and the atmosphere in the elegant restaurant was filled with prominent figures. David entered hand in hand with Stella, who was wearing an elegant dress that highlighted her silhouette. She looked radiant. Her high heels and impeccable hairstyle complemented her look. David, in turn, wore a suit that highlighted his confident posture. Together, they formed a couple that attracted attention, eliciting smiles and whispers of approval from the guests. When they finally approached the bride and groom, David greeted Layla and Gail with an enigmatic smile. "Congratulations on your wedding. May this union bring you everything you seek. A gift from me and my fiancée, Stella." Stella, with a provocative gleam in her eye, added, "Congratulations, Layla." "Congratulations, Gail. We wish you the happiness that we found. I don't know how I got so lucky to have David by my side." Layla was visibly surprised and somewhat shaken. Watching the couple walk away, a mixture of surprise and jealousy washed over her. He looked at David and Stella curiously, trying to understand what was happening. "Who is this woman?" he thought, without hiding his annoyance. "I imagined David would be devastated after our split, but it looks like he's already found someone new. I need to find out more about her." Doubt persisted in Layla's eyes, while the scene of David and Stella together became an enigma that she knew she needed to unravel. The party was lively and Davy felt confident. He had managed to make the desired impact on Layla, and to top it off, the conversation with the client interested in sustainable projects was going very well. Everything seemed to be in their favor until the situation took an unexpected turn. Layla, visibly altered by the drink and full of anger, impulsively grabbed the microphone. "I have something to tell everyone," he announced, with a trembling voice and eyes fixed on David and Stella. "I discovered something surprising. David's new love is not who she says she is. Stella is not a successful businesswoman, nor is she a socialite. She was just homeless before David decided to help." The room fell silent, and Layla continued. "I just confirmed this with Jennifer, his former secretary, who still works as an assistant. I don't want that person at my wedding. I'm afraid of what she might do here. Please leave now." The murmur filled the hall. Guests looked at David and Stella with curious and critical eyes, and the once festive atmosphere became uncomfortable. Stella, trying to contain her shock and embarrassment, whispered to David, "I knew this was going to go wrong." Even nervous, she got up and walked to the stage, facing Layla head-on. She took the microphone from Layla and in a firm voice declared, "I'm leaving now, but first I want to make something clear. It doesn't matter if a person is rich or poor. The essential thing is to have character and dignity. Talking about someone without knowing their story is cruel. Yes, I'm not a socialite, and truth, but I also never stole anything from anyone." He turned to Layla, facing her without fear. "I'm glad you left David. He and Yuli deserve someone much better." With a tense face and suppressed tears, she left the stage and walked towards the exit. David, realizing the damage and pain that everything had caused, went after her. But before he could reach her, a terrible accident happened. Stella, distracted and overcome by emotions, crossed the street without paying attention. A truck passing at high speed was unable to stop in time, and the impact was brutal. Her body fell to the ground, and a red stain quickly formed under her head. Desperate, David screamed for help. Panic spread not only on the street, but also inside the restaurant when the guests realized what had happened. The truck driver ran away, his voice choked with apologies. She crossed without looking. "I couldn't stop in time." An ambulance was called immediately, and paramedics arrived to provide first aid. David held Stella's hand, crying uncontrollably. "Please, Stella, forgive me. This is all my fault. Say something. Open your eyes." One of the paramedics tried to calm him down. "Sir, please calm down. She is unconscious and can't hear you now. The case is serious. There may be internal bleeding. We'll do our best, but be prepared for anything." David cried alone in the hospital hallway, feeling overwhelmed with guilt. Stella meant more to him than he had ever imagined, and the possibility of losing her was unbearable. After emergency surgery, doctors reported that Stella had fallen into a coma. The chances of recovery were uncertain, and the fear of what might happen hung heavy in the air. Every day, David and his daughter Evelyn visited Stella in the hospital. They talked to her, read books aloud, and told her stories, hoping that somehow this would help Stella wake up. Even without answers, David didn't give up. He held her hand, murmuring promises of a better future, and Evelyn, with her innocent heart, prayed silently. A few days after the event that destroyed Layla's marriage, an unexpected visitor appeared in David's office. It was Peter, the client he was trying to impress at the wedding. Peter looked troubled, with a deep look of concern. "David, I need to talk to you, but I don't know if you'll believe me. What I have to tell you is unbelievable." David, still shaken by recent events, was confused but curious. "What do you mean?" he asked. Peter took a sip of water, trying to compose himself. "The woman who was with you at the wedding, Stella. She is identical to my deceased daughter, Eleanor." David was perplexed. Peter took a deep breath and continued. "My wife and I got married young. We really wanted to have children, but Anne had health problems that prevented her from getting pregnant. Our only hope was adoption or a surrogate mother. Then we met a midwifery professor who introduced us to a young woman named Cora. She agreed to be our surrogate mother, as she desperately needed money to care for her sick son." He went on to relate how everything had been arranged. Cora became pregnant, but gave birth prematurely while Peter and his wife were traveling. Upon returning, they received the baby, their daughter Eleanor, from the doctor, who assured them that he had given Cora the agreed payment. The family's happiness was immense, but Eleanor fell ill years later, victim of encephalitis caused by a tick bite, and died. The tragedy destroyed Peter and his wife. David listened, sensing the anguish in Peter's account. Then Peter revealed, "I hired a private detective to investigate because I couldn't accept the coincidence." And the detective discovered something unbelievable. Stella is his relative. She is my biological daughter. Cora had twins. He handed us over to Eleanor and took Stella to her hometown, where her eldest son was seriously ill. After the boy's death, Cora's life fell apart, and Stella grew up in a difficult environment, full of suffering. David was speechless, his heart racing. "How is that possible?" he whispered. Peter, teary-eyed, replied, "It's true, David. And now, after all these years, when I finally find out that Stella is my daughter, she is in a coma, fighting for her life. I am deeply grateful that you are by her side. She needs all the support she can get." David looked at Peter, not knowing how to react. The words he had just heard were still ringing in his head. "Don't worry about what others say. I take care of them. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to help you." Peter's voice was firm, but the concern was evident. David was stunned, trying to understand the gravity of the situation. "I know I'm happy that Stella is your daughter, but I blame myself for convincing her to come to this wedding with me. Now, she could die because of me," David said, the pain in his voice clear. "I want to help her, but I don't know how. The doctors say there's almost no chance. We just have to wait." Peter, without hesitation, replied, "Wait? What do you mean by wait?" David asked, alarmed. "Don't worry," Peter said firmly. "We will do everything possible to save my daughter. I will find the best doctors. She'll be fine, I promise. Now I have a reason to live." He paused, with a look that reflected a mixture of determination and hope. "If I knew her father was waiting for her, I think she would wake up faster." Peter's words left David in shock. Could a father's love change everything? He said goodbye to Peter and rushed to the hospital. Upon arriving at Stella's room, David's heart skipped a beat. There she was, lying in bed with her eyes closed, and the monitors around her were blinking frantically. He walked over, took her cold, lifeless hand and squeezed it tightly. "Stella, please hear my voice. You have to wake up. Your father. Peter recognized you at that wedding and knew immediately that you were his daughter," David said, trying not to let the sadness take over his words. "Do you hear me? Your father is here to help you. He is anxiously waiting for you to get better. He loves you deeply, and I am here too, waiting for you. Not as your boss, not just as a friend, but as someone who considers you the most important and dear person in his life. It was only in the face of this terrible situation that I realized how much you mean to me. Please, Stella, wake up. We're all waiting for you." David felt his heart sink when he saw the silence in the room, but he didn't give up. He closed his eyes for a moment and prayed for her to wake up. That was when, suddenly, a small movement of one of Stella's fingers caught his attention. Soon after, the devices began emitting a constant, alarming sound. David jumped out of the chair, running to find the doctors. The doctor, with an incredulous look, said, "This is a true miracle. The possibility of her waking up after so long was almost nil, but here she is, awake. Let's take care of her the best we can." With the city's best doctors now caring for Stella, she began to improve, albeit slowly. At first, she didn't recognize anyone and had to relearn how to talk, eat alone, and eventually walk. David and Peter didn't leave his side. They were her constant support, always telling her that she would soon be well again. Even little Yuli got involved, drawing for Stella and dreaming of the day when they could talk and walk together again. As Stella's day to leave the hospital approached, she decided to open her heart to David. "During the coma, I found myself floating between two worlds, without pain, without knowing whether I was awake or deeply asleep. But his words about my father, his love for me, it pulled me back. It made me realize that I had a reason to come back, knowing that you were waiting for me. But tell me, were your words just to encourage me to fight, or were you serious? My heart is yours, but I always saw myself as someone small at your side, an architect with a promising future. I thought we would never be more than friends. Please be honest with me now. Don't give me false hope." David looked at her seriously. After a conversation with Yuli, who also supported the idea, he knew it was time to be honest. "Stella, I swear I feel the same way about you, and I swear I won't let you leave my life. Yuli and I need you more than ever. Do you want to be a mother and wife in our family? Let's go straight to our home. What do you think?" Stella couldn't hold back her tears. She was speechless, not believing what she was hearing. Happiness took over her, and the future finally seemed within her reach. Stella hugged David affectionately, and their lips met in a shy kiss. She looked deeply into his eyes, as if she wanted to find confirmation there. And then, the kiss turned into something more, full of passion, emotion, and the feeling that finally everything was falling into place in the right way. What once seemed impossible now became inevitable. They couldn't live without each other. They felt so good together, as if fate had conspired to bring their lives together. But at the same time, Stella knew there was a new phase ahead of her. His meeting with his father was about to happen, and the weight of his entire childhood was still a shadow in his heart. She had grown up believing a lie, unaware of the existence of her real father and living with parents who were not hers. When Peter showed up, it was hard to believe he was really who he said he was. The meeting was at Peter's luxurious mansion, and Stella was dazzled by everything she saw. The immense garden, with shady trees, fountains sparkling in the sun, and marble statues scattered throughout the garden, was a completely new sight for her. I had never imagined that something like this could exist. Suddenly, an elderly woman with a kind look and welcoming smile approached. She wrapped her in a tight hug, saying, "Stella, my daughter, I can't believe I finally found you. You look so much like your sister. Even the little spot under your chin is the same. Forgive us for not being by your side. We were deceived, but now that I found you, I'm grateful we didn't give up." Stella felt enveloped in a welcoming warmth, as if all the weight of her childhood, marked by loneliness, had been softened there, in that embrace. No one had ever hugged her with so much love. She kissed the hands of the woman she called mother and whispered, "I'm so glad I was found, that you didn't give up on me." Before meeting David, Stella's life had been a constant struggle. There were moments when she felt like there was no more reason to continue, when everything seemed too dark. But now, with this new chance, she knew she would do everything possible to make her parents proud. Peter, visibly moved, spoke firmly. "Stella, my daughter, all of this is yours now. Nothing will be the same again. If you decide to live with us and work at one of our companies, a great future awaits you. I will teach you everything, and soon you will be at the head of all our businesses. But I noticed you didn't bring any bags. Aren't you going to stay here?" Stella looked at her father with a smile on her face and replied, "Dad, David and I love each other, and I decided to live with him and Evelyn. They have become an essential part of my life. Don't worry, I will visit you often so we can get to know each other better. I hope you understand." Peter hugged her tightly and said, "I understand, daughter. The decision you made makes me happy because family is the most important thing we have. I know how strong and capable a man David is. He went through a lot and still built everything he has today. He deserves someone by his side like you, and you can be sure you will always be welcome here. The doors to our home will always be open, and we will love meeting our granddaughter and spending time with her." Stella officially settled in at David and Evelyn's house, and from the first day, she felt that her presence was essential there. She felt happier than ever, because she finally had a real mother by her side, someone who supported her and gave her the affection she always wanted. Unlike Layla, Evelyn's mother, Stella was patient, loving, and most of all, she knew how to be the perfect woman for David. She constantly remembered her father Peter's words about being the ideal partner for David. Being by his side at all times, offering unconditional support and love. And so it was. Stella was always by David's side, helping him, offering comfort, listening to his problems, and with an astute eye looking for solutions to everything that arose. David, who previously felt trapped and burdened by Layla, now lived in a light and happy relationship with Stella. He couldn't believe the difference. Layla, in contrast, was never like this. Instead of support, she always demanded from David not only affection, but also money and superficial attention. He began to realize that, during his marriage to her, he was practically a slave to his ex-wife's desires. With Stella, everything was different, and he finally felt free. Stella, grateful for everything that had happened, felt at peace with her decision to follow David's side. She knew her life had changed for the better, especially since Layla was out of the picture. She would no longer have to deal with the pain of her wife's betrayal with her ex-husband. The break was painful, but in the end, it was a freedom he never knew he needed. However, the scandal involving Layla didn't stop there. After the separation, Layla had a bad fight with her new husband Gael at a party where the situation got even more out of control. During the party, Layla, furious, accused Gael of making everyone divert attention from her family to him and said that he had put on a ridiculous show, putting Stella and David in an uncomfortable situation. The atmosphere became tense, and Layla's disappointment turned into a show of despair. She, furious and frustrated, looked for ways to attack Stella, trying to hurt David in every way possible. But what happened was the opposite. Layla's anger caused her to completely lose control of the situation, and she ended up being publicly ridiculed. On the other hand, Stella has become an increasingly admired figure, not only because she is David's new partner, but also because of her position in the family and her bond with Peter, a construction magnate. Together, David and Stella began working on innovative projects that quickly put them in the spotlight, bringing them fame and success. Meanwhile, Layla's life with Gail fell apart. Their marriage, which she imagined to be her fairy tale, quickly deteriorated. Gail, who had fallen in love with Layla, began to question his choices and wondered how he could have been so blind as to get involved with her. The trust between the two broke, and regret took over Gail. He knew that if Layla could betray David and abandon even her own daughter, what would she be capable of doing to him? Their relationship entered a cycle of distrust and resentment until Gail finally made the decision to leave her and start a new life, far from that city that only brought back painful memories. Gail, with his intelligence and charm, soon found a new path and a new companion. He left without looking back, leaving Layla alone. Without anyone's support and with her life sinking into misery, Layla belatedly realized that everything she owned had been the result of the efforts of David and later Gail. Now, with nothing, she found herself destitute, alone, and in complete decline. She deeply regretted her choices, especially for having lost the love of David, who had always genuinely loved her. And now she found herself involved in the shadows of her own past, seeking a redemption that seemed increasingly distant. Layla was determined to win David back. He believed that he was the key to returning to the life he had before, and that became his desperate mission. I spent hours waiting for him near the office, made countless calls, and did everything that could please him, but nothing had any effect. David did not hide his discontent. His irritation grew, and he rejected all attempts at reconciliation. "Please, Layla, stop calling me, stop showing up at my work, and stop looking for me," he said clearly. "You ruined everything we had." "Sorry, but it's impossible to think about reconciliation. I'm happy now, with someone who values what they have. You should have thought of this before. Please leave us alone." Despite David's direct words, Layla refused to accept the end. Deep down, I still believed in a chance for forgiveness, a hope of starting over. When he finally realized there was no turning back, he changed his strategy. She decided she wanted to see her daughter Evelyn, even though David had never stopped her. Contact with Evelyn began to intensify. The girl at first was delighted by her mother's sudden interest. They met on the weekends, and one sunny Saturday in the park, Evelyn couldn't stop talking about Stella, her father's new companion. With her eyes shining, she told how Stella taught her how to draw, make cloth dolls, and always had time to talk. Suddenly, Layla's frustration exploded. "Enough, Evelyn! Why do you only talk about Stella? She's nothing, just an intruder in our lives," she shouted, overcome with jealousy. The girl, frightened by her mother's reaction, asked to leave. But Layla, still trapped in her emotions, tried to convince Evelyn of something unthinkable. "Evelyn, we need to get Stella away. Only then can I return home. We will be a family again. You don't need her. You have me, your mother," he insisted. Evelyn became even more suspicious and afraid. "I want you to be happy, Mum, but can I go home now?" "You never seem happy, and you only get angry," he replied, his eyes filling with tears. Reality hit Layla hard. Discussing these matters with her daughter was a mistake. He tried to alleviate the situation, but tension was already created. In less than an hour, Evelyn called her father. Even though she was reluctant, Layla took her back. At David's house, Stella welcomed her with a warm smile. "Hi, Evelyn. Glad you're back. I need help here. How about making an orange cake that your father loves?" called Stella, creating a welcoming atmosphere. Together, they began the task, and the kitchen was filled with joy. Time passed quickly, and soon night fell. David watched, grateful for the serenity and love that Stella brought to her family. Meanwhile, Layla, consumed with sadness from the frustrating encounter, returned home and sought comfort in alcohol and medication. The guilt and hatred for Stella intensified, to the point of losing herself in destructive thoughts, without realizing that the real problem was in herself, in her own choices that kept her away from everything she loved. Layla decided to take extreme action. With his mind full of confused and impulsive thoughts, he headed to David's house with a terrible plan in mind. Anger and despair consumed her. But before he could do something tragic, fate intervened unexpectedly. After losing control of the car, Layla collided violently with a tree in the nearby street. The impact was so strong that it caused an uproar in the neighborhood. David, Stella and Evelyn heard the loud noise and ran outside, alarmed by the scene. Layla's car was destroyed, and she, covered in blood and visibly injured, was trying to get up. In the midst of pain and despair, Layla began to scream, begging David, "David, you need to come back to me. I am the right choice. Forget this manipulator. We can start again, just us and our darling daughter." Evelyn, seeing her mother in that state, was in shock. Tears ran down her face as she murmured, her voice low and shaking, "Mum, you're wrong. You're drunk and saying horrible things. I don't want to go with you, and I don't want you to talk about Stella like that. She's good for us, please." Evelyn's words hit Layla like a knife. Frustration took over her, and with a confused mind, Layla tried to get closer to Stella and David, driven by a feeling of anger and imbalance. However, the deplorable state she found herself in made her stumble and fall, helpless to the ground. An ambulance was quickly called, and Layla was taken to the hospital. The accident and the seriousness of the situation shook everyone. The news that Layla's life was hanging in the balance brought mixed feelings to David. Relieved, but deeply sad, he found the strength to be even more present as a father. Stella stayed by his side, offering support to Evelyn with all the affection and understanding that the situation required. At Layla's funeral, Evelyn cried a lot, but with the help of Stella and David, she began to understand that her mother's choices were what led her to this tragic end. As the months passed, David, Stella and Evelyn became closer than ever. The trio created new bonds, sharing simple and special moments, like watching movie premieres together in the comfort of their home. Evelyn, surrounded by the unconditional love of her father and Stella, managed to recover from her loss and rediscover the joy of living. The family, now stronger and truer, embraced each day with a new perspective of hope. In that house, there was no longer room for grudges or resentment. There was only affection, respect and loyalty between them, forming an unbreakable union. True love, mutual support, and the security of a family that faced pain and came out even stronger prevailed. If you like this story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Other exciting stories await you at the end of the video. Just access them.